There are moments in life when everything you used to understand begins to dissolve. The world stops speaking to you in the languages you once knew. What once made sense now feels hollow, like an echo in an empty room. Words no longer suffice. The gestures that used to convey meaning lose their power. The familiar ways of relating to the world no longer move you as they once did. Carl Jung spoke of symbols as the true language of the soul. And when that symbolic language begins to rise to the surface, everything else turns into noise. You're not losing connection with the world. You're learning to connect from a different space, a different frequency, a different code altogether. You begin to sense that words no longer reach you, neither to express yourself nor to understand others. You try to articulate what you feel, but each sentence feels like a leak. Something important escapes every time you speak. What lives inside you is so vast, so subtle, so deeply intimate that language fails to contain it. And when others speak to you, you sense the gap. What they say doesn't always match what they truly feel. It's not that they are lying, but rather the shared language has become too limited for the depth of perception you now inhabit. You find yourself understanding more through silence than through conversation. A look, a breath, a fleeting gesture carries more weight than 100 well-constructed sentences. And you're not trying to make it happen, it just does. Your body picks up on it before your mind can even process. It's as if a more ancient part of you knows how to read the unsaid, how to hear what carries no sound. This apparent disconnect from external language is not a loss. It's the beginning of a more authentic form of communication, one that doesn't require translation, one that comes from the core. Even when it feels like no one truly understands you, you know you're not disconnected. You're starting to connect on a different plane, the plane where souls recognize each other without a single word. And the sensation that words are no longer enough doesn't leave you in silence because you're empty, but because you're overflowing. What you feel is too deep, too complex, too nuanced for ordinary speech. You try to name it, to explain it, but the moment you do, something essential slips away. It's as if words were too small a container for the vibration that now lives within you. And that's when the new language begins to reveal itself, a language that doesn't rely on grammar, but on resonance, one that isn't spoken from the throat, but emitted from your energy field, a language that isn't meant to convince, but simply to reflect. You realize that a shared silence can be more intimate than 1,000 confessions, that a subtle gesture can open more space for trust than hours of conversation, that the energy someone carries speaks more honestly than any story they could ever tell. Carl Jung believed that every true psychological transformation involves a shedding of the old languages of the self. And you are exactly there, releasing the linguistic structures you once relied on, stepping into a new way of connecting that doesn't come from outside, but rises from within. It feels like you've remembered something ancient, that before you could speak, you already knew how to communicate with the world, with a glance, with a sensation, with your frequency. And while it may have been confusing at first, you felt awkward, misplaced, disconnected. Now it's beginning to make sense. It was never disconnection. It was transition. You are crossing the threshold between the known form of expression and the vibrational truth of feeling. You no longer need to explain everything you feel, because when you are in the presence of someone who has also begun to awaken to this new language, there's nothing to explain. You simply feel. You recognize. Even in old relationships, you've noticed the shift. Some connections now feel exhausting, while others are made of silence that feels like home. You've learned to tell the difference between those who listen with their minds and those who listen with their soul. And now, you only open yourself fully to the latter, because you're not looking for mental understanding, you're seeking resonance. This new language doesn't argue, doesn't need responses, doesn't aim to be right. It simply emits a frequency, one that touches without touch, one that guides without direction, one that transforms without a single word. And you have begun to embody that frequency. You've begun to hold it, to radiate it. And even if it still feels unfamiliar, even if you sometimes feel alone in this new mode of communication, you know, deep in your bones, that it's more truthful than anything you've ever known. Because in this new language, you don't exchange ideas, you share vibrations. And when the vibration is coherent, everything else falls into place naturally. As this new way of communicating settles into your being, something even deeper emerges. You're no longer trying to be understood. You want to be felt. And that changes everything. Understanding is a mental task. It's limited. It's fragmented. Feeling, on the other hand, is total. It happens in the body, in the soul, in the energy. You, who once felt the need to explain every emotion, justify every choice, translate every thought into digestible words for others, now simply want to be, without needing to label what you are. You no longer need to form perfect phrases. Your presence alone is enough. And that presence isn't passive. It's a vibration that speaks even when your lips are closed. It is a form of communication that doesn't need volume, doesn't aim to impress, doesn't try to persuade. It is pure coherence. It is presence becoming language. You begin to notice how, in certain situations, your body knows what to do before your mind does. It knows when to approach, when to withdraw, when to open, when to close. Not because you learned these signs in a book, but because you are remembering a way of communicating that comes from the soul. It's not something you study. It's something you awaken. It's not something you force. It's something you allow. And as this awakening unfolds, you start perceiving others in new ways. Words no longer confuse you. You see the mismatch between what someone says and what they actually radiate. You no longer get lost in a kind tone if the vibration underneath is evasive. You're no longer seduced by narratives if the person's energy field is closed. That clarity doesn't make you cold. It makes you honest. And from that honesty, you now choose what to connect with and what to release. Not out of judgment, but out of resonance. You no longer make an effort to maintain connections where the vibrational language is absent. Because now you know, when two souls no longer speak the same energetic language, the language you now recognize, any attempt at connection becomes exhaustion. Carl Jung said that the soul transforms through symbols, not definitions. And you have begun to read symbols, not with your eyes, but with your energy field. Symbols are everywhere, in subtle pauses, in uncomfortable silences, in changes of tone, in unexpected distance. You no longer need to interpret everything. You just feel it. And from that feeling, you choose. You now speak to the world the way you would speak to a river, listening to its currents, not its surface. To those who still communicate from the surface, you might seem strange, unpredictable, maybe even incomprehensible. But that's okay, because you didn't come here to be understood in the old language. You came to embody a new one that is not spoken, but vibrated, one that is not written, but felt. And you now are part of that new language, not as a student, as a channel. Sign number 2. You are starting to relate to others in an entirely new way, not based on what they say, but on what their energy communicates. Something within you has shifted. You no longer evaluate people solely by their words or by how well they present themselves on the surface. What now matters most to you is the resonance, the vibrational frequency they carry, the invisible truth that their presence either sustains or contradicts. It has become increasingly difficult for you to maintain connections that are based only on appearances or polite conversation. You've realized that your relationships have become more selective, not because you're judging others, but because your energetic needs are evolving. There's a deeper necessity guiding you now, and it doesn't come from the intellect. It's rooted in your energy field, in your soul. You've found that no matter how well someone speaks, no matter how kind they seem, if their energy does not align with yours, the connection simply does not flow, and you can't force it. In the past, maybe you stayed out of obligation, out of habit, or to avoid making others uncomfortable. You might have tolerated situations that weren't aligned with your essence, just to be polite or keep the peace. But now, something within you naturally resists those dynamics. It's not that you're trying to distance yourself. It's that your nervous system, your energetic body, can no longer tolerate what lacks coherence. There's an intuitive part of you that closes off when the presence of another doesn't feel grounded in authenticity, peace, or truth. It's not a mental decision. It's not strategy. It's your soul responding at a level much deeper than logic. Carl Jung spoke of the process of individuation, the integration of the total self, and it feels like you've stepped into that process. You're beginning to understand that real unity, real connection, can only happen when there's truth on both sides. You're starting to see that the most profound conversations don't always require words, that sometimes a single, serene glance can carry more meaning than 1,000 well-constructed sentences. You're drawn more to the presence of someone who can sit in silence with you than to those who talk endlessly just to avoid their own discomfort. You are now deeply moved by clean, honest energy, far more than by rehearsed speeches or perfect expressions, and this has created a natural purification of your connections. You can no longer thrive in spaces where the connection is only mental, where emotions are faked or forced, or where interactions remain on the surface. Instead, you're choosing to be around people who speak through their energy, whose presence confirms the truth of their words. You now require congruence between speech, action, and vibration. You're no longer willing to share your presence in places where you can't also bring your soul, your body, and your entire energetic self. You're no longer chasing intensity, you're seeking truth. And real truth doesn't need noise to be heard. It only needs to be felt. This shift in how you relate to others isn't coming from a desire to be spiritually advanced or from any external pressure to evolve. It's happening naturally. It's like a forgotten part of yourself has awakened and is now guiding you back to what's real. You've felt it in your own body, in your skin. You can't pretend anymore. You can't stay where there is no authenticity, not because you're rejecting anyone, but because your energy field simply doesn't collaborate with anything disconnected from its own truth. You've come to see that the language of energy is raw and honest. It can't be rehearsed. It can't be photoshopped. It can't be manipulated. And now, your soul, tuned into this new frequency, can no longer be deceived by appearances. You've begun to see, with quiet clarity, who carries their light from within, and who only projects it outward for others to see. You've noticed that relationships that once felt intense now feel noisy. People who once gave you comfort now leave you feeling drained. Externally, nothing may have changed, but internally, your frequency has transformed, and that shift is restructuring your relationships in ways you can't ignore. You no longer force conversations that lack soul. You no longer fill silences out of politeness. You no longer pretend to care just to seem presentable. You've learned to honor the silence that tells the truth over the words that try to hide it. You now crave company that allows you to breathe peacefully, even if no words are exchanged, rather than being overwhelmed by empty stimulation. And yes, that may have led you to create distance from people you still love. But you've come to realize that it's not emotional distance, it's vibrational realignment. You haven't stopped loving. You've just begun loving from a different space, a subtler, freer, more conscious frequency, one that can't be forced, one that can't be faked. Even in new encounters, you've started to notice something remarkable. Before your mind even forms an opinion, your energy scans the room. Within seconds, you sense whether it's safe to open up or if you need to protect yourself. And again, this isn't about judgment. It's about vibrational recognition. You no longer offer yourself from a sense of duty. You only offer yourself when there's resonance, when something inside you says yes without hesitation. Carl Jung also spoke of the importance of living from the whole self, not just from the mask. And that's what you're doing now. You're no longer interested in engaging with personas or projections. You respond only to that which vibrates from the soul. And this way of connecting doesn't have a name. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It doesn't require conflict or explanation. It just is. Because now you understand something you didn't fully grasp before. True connection is born when two souls recognize each other in silence. And anything that doesn't arise from that sacred space, it isn't connection. It's just noise. Sign 3. Your body has started to react as another channel of the subtle language you're learning. You no longer feel just with your soul. You feel with your chest, your skin, your stomach, your breath. You've noticed how your body responds before your thoughts, as if it's speaking in physical codes you never learned but instinctively understand. A sudden tension, a warmth in the chest, a brief shiver, an unexpected expansion. These no longer feel like symptoms, but messages. You're no longer disconnected from your body. You're more deeply inside it. And in this new way of inhabiting yourself, your body has become an instrument that reads what cannot be seen. Carl Jung understood that the unconscious expresses itself through the body, and now you're beginning to realize that this language doesn't need rational translation, just presence. You felt how some people drain you without speaking a word, how certain places make you sleepy or close your chest, and at the same time, how other presences soothe you just by being near, how some spaces open your breath as if bringing you back home. Maybe before, you ignored it. You thought it was just tiredness, anxiety, coincidence. But now you know better. Now you know it's your body saying yes or no, and you listen because your body doesn't lie. And this new sensitivity hasn't made you fragile. It doesn't lie. This new sensitivity hasn't made you fragile. It has made you coherent. You no longer force yourself to stay in places your body wants to leave. You no longer normalize tensions you used to tolerate out of politeness. You no longer sacrifice your well-being just to please others. You've come to understand that your body isn't a container. It's a channel. And every sensation isn't an obstacle. It's a guide. And even though this language can be uncomfortable, because it makes you leave spaces your mind wanted to stay, you follow it. Because you know that when you listen, something aligns within. And when you ignore yourself, everything falls out of order. You're starting to understand that your body, in its subtlest form, also connects you to the invisible. And that level of connection can no longer be shut off. And that connection with your body isn't just physical, it's vibrational. You no longer inhabit it as mere moving matter, but as a tool of energetic precision. Every pulse, every micro shift, every sensation has become a silent form of wisdom. And that wisdom doesn't need explanation. It just needs to be respected. You've begun to see how your body anticipates things. It knows before you do whether a place will uplift or crush you. It knows whether a conversation will nourish or exhaust you. It knows whether a glance is sincere or hiding something. And instead of ignoring it, you've learned to trust those signals that once seemed subtle, but are now your primary language. Sometimes you stop midway and don't know why. Your chest just tightens, or tension in your neck tells you not to go that way, or you feel instant relief walking into a house, even if you can't explain it. And then you know, not because you think, but because you feel. Carl Jung said that body, soul, and psyche are not separate. And now you're living that truth, vividly, for real, in the flesh. Your body is now the first receptor of the energy around you. You no longer need arguments to leave a place that makes your body tense. You don't need justifications to stay where your body expands. How certain tones of voice unsettle you, how certain pauses calm you, how certain silences feel like home. And it's not coincidence. It's vibration translated into physiology. It's energy translated into sensation. It's your soul speaking through your body, guiding you when words fall short. And that guidance, though invisible, is precise. It's intimate. It's accurate. So much so that you no longer need anyone else to understand. If your body tells you, you believe it. If your body feels it, you honor it. If your body pulls away, you don't force it. You've stopped hurting yourself to please others. You've stopped ignoring yourself to fit in. You've stopped betraying yourself just to belong. Now you know that your body doesn't just hold you. It protects you, guides you, takes care of you. And that relationship, that sacred bond between you and your body, has become one of the purest forms of connection you've ever known. Because before, you searched for answers outside. Now, you feel them within. And that change has changed everything. Sign 4. You've become more attuned to symbols, signs, and subtle messages that you used to overlook. You start noticing patterns, coincidences, repeated phrases, numbers that follow you, and synchronistic events that defy logical explanation. It's not obsession. It's not superstition. It's sensitivity. Your energetic field tuning into a new language that life has started using to speak to you. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, events with no apparent causal connection, but with such precise meaning that they can't be ignored. You've begun to experience that precision, not as fantasy, but as a tangible way in which the universe responds when you're ready to hear from a different level. You encounter the right words at the right time, songs that feel like they were written for you, random meetings that trigger deep inner shifts, and symbols appearing just as you were about to give up. And you can no longer call that chance because something within you knows it isn't. You've realized that life doesn't only express itself through external events. It also speaks through inner impressions, And often, that connection occurs through the invisible, the vibrational, the symbolic. You no longer seek signs to validate your mind. You recognize them through vibration. Even in chaos, you've learned to sense subtle clues that tell you when to move forward, when to pause, when to let go. No one tells you. You don't decide it rationally. You just feel it. And when you follow that feeling, everything aligns. The more you embrace this symbolic sensitivity, the more present you become. You no longer live on autopilot. You're not disconnected. You're attentive, not from a controlling mind, but from a listening soul. And that has completely transformed the way you exist in the world. Your perception of symbols isn't driven by a desperate search for meaning. It's a vibrational openness that's settled in you without force. You're not interpreting from need. You're recognizing from the soul. What once seemed like mere coincidence now feels like a personal, intimate language meant only for you. And you don't need to fully understand what each sign means, because you've realized not all signs come as riddles to be solved. Some simply arrive to support you, to remind you, to silently walk with you, to say, you're on the path, even if you don't know where it leads. You've stopped begging life to speak loudly. Now you hear its whispers. You read between the lines. You see the invisible. Sometimes it's a word overheard while walking by, a phrase on a sign just when your heart was about to shut down, an animal crossing your path right before an important decision, a book someone casually suggests, unaware that inside it lies exactly what your soul had been searching for. And you no longer dismiss it as random. You take it as sacred communication. Carl Jung understood that symbols are a gateway to what the mind cannot fully grasp. You've begun to live in that symbolic realm, where everything has a deeper echo, where the outer world reflects the inner, not to trap you in obsession, but to remind you that you're not separate from life's rhythm, that you're part of something wiser, softer, more accurate than any plan you could ever make. Even in moments of confusion, you've stopped asking for guidance out of desperation. You ask from presence, and something always shows up. Not always what you expected, but always what you needed. This way of connecting has replaced many of your old ways of praying, asking, or planning. You're no longer trying to control life's flow. You're learning to move with it. And in that dance, life speaks to you, in symbols, in synchronicities, in silences full of meaning. And you've remembered how to listen, without needing proof, without demanding guarantees, just from an open soul that recognizes when something is meant for you, even if you can't explain why. You've stopped searching for signs to confirm your plans. Instead, you let the signs reveal a path more honest than any your mind could invent. A path that isn't always easy, but it's real. And now you know how to feel when something is real, not because you understand it, but because it resonates, because it settles in you as if you've always known it, because in some way you already did. And as you open more to this symbolic language, you realize you're not just a receiver, you're a transmitter too. Your own energy begins to send signals to others, even when you say nothing, even when you're not aware of it. As though by fine-tuning your sensitivity to life's messages, you become part of the message yourself. And then you see it. You're not just reading the universe, you're in dialogue with it. Life no longer feels like a sequence of events happening to you. You feel it as a living field responding to your inner state. When you close off, the signals fade. When you open, they appear, as if they'd been waiting for you. Not because you force them, but because you allow them. And in that invisible dance, you begin trusting the subtle more than the certain, resonance more than rigid plans, inner guidance over external maps. Even on days that feel stuck, you sense movement inside, an intuition, a sudden memory, a feeling you can't explain, but that clearly shows you the way, and you follow it. Not with anxiety, but with a newfound softness, with the surrender that comes from knowing life doesn't need to shout to guide you. Sometimes it only takes a vibration. Carl Jung said, "Everything that deeply impacts us in the outer world has an archetypal root within." And you've started recognizing those roots. What you see outside is no longer foreign. It's symbol, it's mirror, it's echo. And the more honest you are with yourself, the louder that echo becomes. That's why when you disconnect from your truth, everything becomes blurry. The signs scatter, intuition dims, the path feels heavy. But when you return to yourself, to your center, everything realigns, like the whole world breathing in sync with you. You no longer live waiting for miracles. You live recognizing them, in the smallest details, in the inner rhythms, in the messages that come when your soul needs them, not your mind. And you've learned to know the difference. Now you understand you are not alone, not lost, not drifting. You're in constant dialogue with a greater intelligence, one that doesn't impose but whispers. And at last, you've remembered how to listen. Sign 5. You no longer feel the need to build authentic connections. They are simply recognized. You've stopped trying to make everything fit together. You're no longer interested in forcing bonds, in convincing others to understand you, or in reshaping yourself just to be liked or accepted. What you're drawn to now is something far more subtle, more intimate, something that cannot be explained or logically constructed. You search for a resonance that doesn't arise through effort, but rather appears spontaneously, in silence, in stillness, something that is not thought, but felt, a connection that does not require time to grow, because it does not come from time, it comes from the soul. And when that kind of connection happens, you know it, not because the other person says the right things, not because their opinions mirror your own. You know it because something within you aligns, effortlessly, because there is a vibration, an unspoken harmony that finds you, as if it had been searching for you just as long as you had been searching for it. Carl Jung once spoke of the collective unconscious, a shared space where souls touch beyond what our eyes can see, where truth travels without sound and understanding emerges without explanation. You've begun to experience these connections. They're not logical. They don't follow the usual rules of time or story, but they leave their mark on you, deeply. There are relationships you cannot explain how they began, yet they feel as if they've always been part of your life. Brief encounters that echo louder than years of history. Glances that don't need to be interpreted because they are instantly understood. And just as you've learned to welcome these connections, you've also learned to accept when that resonance simply isn't there. You no longer take it personally. It doesn't feel like rejection anymore. It's not something to mourn. It's just a quiet knowing that energy isn't flowing there. And that means there's no need to insist, because now you understand something profoundly simple. If you have to force the connection, then it's not a connection. It's a strategy. And you no longer live from strategies. You no longer operate from effort. You live from truth, from energy, from intuition. This new language of connection has taught you to love from freedom, not from need, to be present without suffocating, to hold without possessing, and to let go without creating drama. You've stopped craving relationships that look perfect. You've stopped idealizing partnerships that check boxes. You now seek what is real. And the truth, in this new language of the soul, doesn't require explanation. It only needs to be felt. This way of connecting, one that no longer strives to build through control, but rather recognizes through energy, has brought you a peace you didn't even realize you were missing. You no longer chase bonds that appeal only to reason, because now you understand that the most meaningful connections aren't understood. They are remembered. And when you remember, there's no doubt, no confusion, no inner debate, just certainty. But not the kind that comes from the mind, the kind that comes from the soul. A certainty that feels like something returning home. Not because the other person is just like you. Not because they give you everything you ever wanted. But because their energy doesn't compete, doesn't perform, doesn't pretend. And you, who have stopped negotiating your sensitivity, recognize it immediately. You don't need promises. You don't need a mapped-out future. You just need that vibrational honesty that makes the present moment enough. You've released the belief that relationships must be built through forced consistency or constant verbal validation. Now you know, when the energy is real, it doesn't require maintenance. It sustains itself, and when it isn't, no amount of effort can salvage it. Carl Jung also said that the meeting of two authentic people always activates something transformational. And you have started to experience those meetings. They're not always easy, they're not always comfortable, but they always bring you back to yourself. And you've learned to recognize when a cycle has come to an end. You no longer drag out what no longer vibrates. You no longer cling to what has become heavy. You no longer wait for someone to stay when their soul has already left, because you now understand what is real cannot be held. It must be honored. And when it leaves, you give thanks for what it was. Even solitude no longer feels like a void. Now it feels like a sacred place, a chamber of tuning, where you refine your own energy, preparing for the next connection, not to be just another noise in your life, but a shared melody. You've stopped searching for someone to complete you. Now, you long to share yourself with someone who has also found themselves. And if they haven't arrived yet, you don't fall into despair, because you trust that the language of life will bring together those who vibrate at the same frequency. At the exact moment, both are ready to truly listen, not with their ears, but with their hearts. That truth no longer demands explanations. It simply asks for coherence. Now, you connect with those who truly feel you, not those who try to interpret you, with those who listen without defending themselves, with those who are not afraid of silence, because they've come to understand that silence is also a profound form of love. This is the new kind of connection you're beginning to recognize. It's not hurried, it has no particular form, but when it arrives, it transforms everything. And now that you've felt this, now that these signs have begun to stir within you, you may finally understand. You are not disconnecting from the world. You are tuning yourself. You are learning to listen differently, to feel from a deeper place, to recognize a language that no one teaches, but that your soul has always known. Life has never stopped speaking to you. It has only changed the way it communicates. And you are finally ready to hear it. Thank you for allowing this message to vibrate within you. Thank you for holding on to your sensitivity, even when the world hasn't known how to name it. Thank you for recognizing that the invisible speaks too, and that you are beginning to understand its voice. If this message resonated with you, if something deep within you was touched by the truth, then I invite you to stay, to follow this path. A path where the soul remembers what the mind had long forgotten. Have you ever felt that something is shifting within you, even if you can't quite explain it? It's not just about the external world changing. It goes deeper than that. It's a subtle but powerful transformation that begins as a vibration inside you, a kind of inner pause between different versions of yourself. You can feel that you no longer fit into the mold of who you used to be. Yet, at the same time, the version of you that you are becoming hasn't fully arrived either. It's as if you're in a liminal space, suspended between what was and what is about to be. Outwardly, everything might seem the same. Life may appear to be moving as usual. But inside, within your heart and soul, there are signs, brief moments, sudden impulses, unexpected emotions. It's as though the universe is working silently, behind the scenes, gently reorganizing your path. It's not chaos, it's divine order. It's preparing to hand you something that your eyes can't yet see, but your spirit already senses. This process isn't about desiring more. It's not about craving or chasing. It's about becoming. It's about being prepared internally to hold what's coming. Because what's on its way is not small, it's immense, and it requires space, strength, and alignment. Without realizing it, you're becoming that space. You're being shaped to receive something greater than anything you've held before. The first signal, you may have started to feel a subtle distance from certain people, habits, or environments that once felt like home. But it's not rejection. It's not anger. There's no conflict or bitterness. Something within you has simply moved away. Silently, peacefully, without fanfare. It's as if your soul is walking ahead, whispering that it no longer belongs in places that don't resonate with your new frequency. And you can't force yourself to stay. You can't pretend anymore. You can't fake belonging where your spirit no longer feels alive. Even if your mind doesn't fully understand it, your heart accepts it with quiet grace. This isn't loss, it's release. You're not being left behind, you're being freed. Because the universe does not build new beginnings on foundations that are no longer true. To bring the new into your life, it must first create space. This detachment isn't impulsive, it's not rebellion, it's a silent retreat, natural, organic. You find that you no longer need to explain yourself. No dramatic exits, no justifications. Something simply feels complete. The chapter has ended. What once held you is now holding you back. What once filled you is now too heavy to carry. And instead of resisting, you're letting go. Not from logic, but from a soul-deep knowing. This sense of detachment might feel strange, even uncomfortable, but it isn't emptiness. It's preparation. You are being gently stripped of what cannot journey with you to your next level. Not because it was wrong, but because it has already fulfilled its role. You've stopped trying to fit into dynamics that no longer nourish you. Something deep within knows that something greater is coming. Something that cannot arrive if you're still holding on to the things that shrink you. And this kind of letting go doesn't make you colder, it makes you clearer. Your decisions begin to align with your truth. You start saying no without guilt. You walk away without drama. And you do it not from ego, but from inner wisdom. Your energy is changing. And it's not random. It's a message. It's preparation. The universe is not taking from you. It's aligning you. When you release what no longer resonates, You're saying, even without words, I'm ready. Ready for what's next, even if you can't name it yet. That silent gesture you make within, though invisible, moves unseen forces. Even if you don't yet understand why certain doors are closing, one day you'll realize they were never rejections, they were redirections. The space you are creating is precisely where something greater needed to enter. And here's the miracle. This inner release does not leave you feeling empty, but strangely at peace. It's as if, without meaning to, you've aligned yourself with a greater rhythm. As if what you're releasing isn't taking pieces of you, but letting go of outdated versions that no longer serve you. You're not losing anything essential. On the contrary, you are arriving at your essence. This entire process feels like a silent cleansing. People may drift away without conflict. Opportunities may fall through without clear reasons. Paths that once looked solid may vanish overnight. And yet, instead of clinging, you exhale. And that breath, so small, so quiet, is a profound sign that you are ready. Because those who trust what leaves are already prepared to receive what's coming. Your sensitivity deepens. You no longer tolerate the superficial, the artificial, or anything born from fear. You begin to crave truth, realness. You seek connections that are rooted, not convenient. You long for silences that feel safe, not awkward. Your soul is no longer interested in distraction. It craves expansion. And this calling, it's not coincidence. It's not whim. It's response. Because the universe doesn't only hear your words, it listens to your frequency. When you shift what you carry inside, everything around you begins to shift as well. Even when nostalgia tries to pull you back to what you've released, a deeper part of you knows you can't return. Not because you don't want to, but because you don't fit anymore. You no longer betray yourself just to belong. You no longer force comfort where there is none. And that alone is an act of spiritual maturity. You're not giving up. You're growing up. You're not running away. You're recognizing that what is truly great cannot be built on what denies your truth. You are not just releasing. You are claiming. You are reclaiming the space that is yours by divine design. And then something else becomes clear. This entire unfolding has its own rhythm, far removed from your logical mind. There are days when you feel illuminated, aligned, and there are others where everything feels paused, unclear. You wonder why things seem stalled, why so much seems to be in limbo. But deep inside, you know, you're not stuck, you're being rewritten. Because when the universe is preparing something magnificent, it silences the noise. It slows down the chaos. Not as punishment, but so you can finally hear what's rising from your own depths. You don't react the way you used to. Your response to endings is no longer resistance. It's awareness. Even through the pain, you choose to let go with intention. You've come to understand that what is being deactivated in your life isn't being taken. It's being replaced by something that aligns more completely with who you truly are. And though you may not be able to describe it yet, you carry that quiet certainty with you. You've begun to live not from the surface, but from vibration. And anything that doesn't feel real simply falls away. What isn't sustained by the soul loses its power, and you no longer try to hold on to it. Because something within you, deeper than logic, older than memory, knows that every ending now is making room for a greater beginning. You cannot force this process. You can only honor it. And it is in that honoring that you become something sacred. You become space. Space for what is real, for what is vast, for what is truly in tune with who you are now. And this doesn't happen because you wished for it. It happens because you are ready to hold it. Because without even realizing, your soul already said yes, and the universe, in its invisible, perfect language, is already responding. The second sign: you begin to experience unexpected pauses, projects that come to a halt without warning, plans that get postponed without a clear reason. Paths that once seemed defined suddenly become uncertain and blurred. At first, it's frustrating. You feel like things are falling apart, or like you're doing something wrong. But over time, something inside you begins to shift. You stop interpreting the pause as a blockage or failure. Instead, you begin to see it for what it truly is: a signal, a moment of divine recalibration. You begin to understand that there is something sacred within stillness, something you cannot force, no matter how much effort or desire you pour into it. The universe, when preparing you for something truly significant, doesn't rush you. It doesn't push you to accelerate. Instead, it pauses you, not to stop you permanently, but to strengthen you deeply, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because the most profound growth often happens in the silence, in the stillness, in the waiting. This pause is not a delay. It is a sacred transition. And you, who have finally learned to stay present in that pause, are being restructured from the inside out. In the beginning, those periods of stagnation disturbed you. You felt like you were wasting time, like you had lost your direction, like maybe you had made a mistake somewhere along the way. But then, in the silence that stretched between what once was and what had yet to arrive, something started to become visible. Not a clear answer, not a defined path, but a new kind of stability, a peace that did not depend on circumstances, but emerged from within. This newfound stability wasn't something the world gave you. It was something your soul cultivated as it adjusted itself. Because when the universe prepares you for greatness, it doesn't merely offer you time, it reconfigures you completely. And to do that, it needs you to stop running. It requires you to be still long enough for all the pieces to align without you having to force them into place. During that pause, your perception starts to shift. You begin to see things you previously ignored. You start to hear your inner voice without interference, to recognize yourself without the noise of others' expectations. And even though that shift is subtle, almost invisible, it changes everything. You also come to understand a powerful truth. Not everything that stops is broken. Some processes need time to mature, quietly, beneath the surface. Just like roots grow in darkness before a plant breaks through the soil, some directions in life are realigning themselves in ways you cannot yet see. Not because you're off course, but because you are being gently, lovingly redirected towards something your mind cannot yet conceive. And in place of resistance, you choose to inhabit the pause. You make peace with the quiet. And right there, in that exact moment of surrender, the universe starts to open a new door for you. The pause acts like a cleansing force. It removes everything you are maintaining out of desperation or anxiety. It clears away what was sustained by urgency, by empty expectations, by restless striving. You stop acting just to fill a void. You stop moving out of fear of standing still. You learn to sit with yourself without distractions, and in doing so, you become something more, a clearer channel for what's meant for you. Because here's the truth: the universe does not deposit greatness into chaotic spaces. It entrusts it to those who have made a home within themselves. The more you surrender to the pause, the more clarity you receive, not in the form of dramatic revelations, but as a quiet knowing that roots itself in your decisions, as a deeper intuition, as a wisdom that doesn't come from thinking, but from feeling. And in that feeling, everything that once seemed stalled begins to make sense. This is not about passively waiting for something to happen. It's about realizing that you are what's about to happen. It's about becoming the very thing you were hoping would arrive. You begin to realize that this pause hasn't been isolating you. It's been preserving you. It's not that opportunities have stopped showing up, or that the right people aren't appearing, or that answers are being withheld. It's that you are being protected. Protected because what's on its way requires the clearest, truest, most refined version of you. You cannot hold on to something big while remaining in the same state that held on to the small. Expansion requires a shedding. It requires space. It requires stillness. And that stillness, though it may not always be comfortable, becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space where you stop defining yourself by what you do or what you achieve, and start valuing yourself simply for being. Even when nothing is happening on the outside, you discover you don't need to constantly produce to feel worthy. That progress doesn't have to be visible every day to be meaningful. That true growth often doesn't make noise, but it leaves a profound imprint on the soul. And that deep inner feeling, that quiet inner shift, is a sign of transformation, one that is silently but powerfully taking place. You begin to see that the pause is not an empty void. It is a place of gestation. Something is forming, not around you, but within you. Your perspective begins to change. You see time differently. You experience the moment differently. You stop reacting the way you used to. You stop fighting what no longer flows. You no longer measure your life based on visible movement. Now, you know that even what stands still is still working, still shaping, still guiding. In this stillness, you learn to distinguish what's urgent from what's true. You no longer leap at every impulse. You no longer allow the pressures of the world to dictate your pace. Something in you has slowed down, not out of weakness, but out of depth. And in that depth, you begin to resonate with what is truly yours. What is coming is not more of the same. It is something entirely different, because now you are different. And this is where the realization settles in fully. The pause was never about waiting. It was about preparation. You weren't being stopped. You were being tuned. Your soul was expanding, stretching, to be able to hold what's coming with courage, with clarity, and without fear. And that, even though it still hasn't fully manifested, already feels like a silent call inside you. A vibration that doesn't need to be explained. A knowing that doesn't come from logic, but from alignment. Something big is approaching, and this time, you are truly ready to receive it. The third sign is when you begin to notice that your sensitivity to the invisible is growing. You start perceiving things that used to slip right past your awareness. The energy of a place, the emotional state of a person, even if they don't say a word. You start picking up on subtle cues in your environment that tell you whether something is meant for you or not. And this isn't imagination or suggestion, it's refined perception. This heightened sensitivity isn't random, it's part of your preparation. The universe doesn't just give you something great and then leave you to figure it out on your own. It trains you to be able to hold, carry, and sustain it. That's why, before what you've been waiting for arrives, you go through a process of inner refinement. You are being shaped into someone who feels more deeply, who senses more clearly, who knows when to pause, not because the world tells you to, but because your soul does. Even when the world urges you to keep going, that inner whisper tells you to stop, to listen, to align. This new sensitivity wasn't something you consciously chose. It simply began to intensify on its own. Things you once tolerated now make you uncomfortable. What used to go unnoticed now echoes deeply within you. You feel it in conversations charged with energy, in places that feel misaligned, in decisions that don't sit right, often before your rational mind has even had a chance to catch up. At first, it may confuse you, but soon you begin to understand. It's not confusion, it's connection. You're starting to read reality from a different layer. You no longer see only what happens on the surface. You begin to feel what lies underneath. You sense the unspoken, the subtle vibrations, the truth behind the words. You notice what energy is communicating before any words are said. And yes, at times, this may make you feel isolated, but that too is part of the process. It's not because you're meant to disconnect from the world, but because you need clarity. You need to know what truly belongs to you and what doesn't. The universe is training you in the subtle realms, in a kind of intelligence that cannot be taught in books, but is remembered by the soul. This elevated sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a tool, because the greatness that is coming is not meant to passively belong to you. It is meant to move through you. And if you're not attuned, if you don't know how to listen, how to stop when something feels off, you might get lost in the noise. That's why now, more than ever, you feel everything so strongly. Not because you're more fragile, but because you're more awake. And with this increased sensitivity comes a new way to protect yourself. You no longer need lengthy explanations to walk away from something that feels incoherent. You no longer feel the need to justify your boundaries. You don't have to explain to the world why something doesn't resonate with you. You feel it, and that is enough. Your body has become an antenna, your soul a compass, and you are starting to trust. Even on the days when everything feels overwhelming, you know deep inside that none of this is a mistake. You're going through an internal expansion. That overwhelming openness is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of readiness. Because only someone who can feel deeply is capable of holding something truly meaningful. And you, who have silently sensed this transformation for a long time, are now being finely tuned to receive it. You're also beginning to notice that this new sensitivity not only helps you detect what's not meant for you, it powerfully connects you to what is. There are moments when you walk into a place and feel instant peace, without knowing why. Conversations that are brief but ignite something in your soul. Projects that have barely started, yet you feel their purpose vibrating through you. That kind of certainty doesn't come from your mind. It comes from a deeper part of you that is becoming clearer, sharper, more aligned. And this doesn't happen because you've learned more. It happens because you're less distracted, less conditioned, less disconnected from your essence. In this quiet preparation, the universe has been removing what numbed you, not as punishment, but as a way to bring you back to your center. Because only from that place can you truly recognize what is meant for you. You also start to realize that you can no longer tolerate almost half-truths, half-hearted connections, lukewarm decisions. They now feel unbearable. What once was mildly annoying is now impossible to ignore. But this isn't intolerance, it's clarity. Your soul has become too precise to pretend, too real to entertain what doesn't match the frequency of who you are now. And yes, that might hurt at times, but it's also protection. It's a sign. What's coming doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be authentic. And that's why the universe is refining your perception until you can only move toward what is in alignment. There is no more room for what doesn't resonate, no more space for what feeds your ego but leaves your soul starving. You're being refined for the real. And in the midst of that intensity, something else begins to arrive. A new kind of calm. Because when you finally stop forcing yourself to carry what doesn't vibrate with you, your energy begins to align, and your life begins to breathe again. You, who used to doubt every instinct, now recognize a true yes the moment it appears. You know it without thinking. Your body confirms it. Your energy expands. There is no need to convince yourself anymore. And in that vulnerable yet grounded state, soft yet certain, you're being prepared, not to merely survive, not to just adapt, but to receive, hold, and channel something bigger than you, something that can only manifest through you. With this heightened sensitivity comes a deep honesty with yourself. You can no longer ignore your feelings. You can no longer remain silent when something within you says no. You can no longer stay in connections out of habit or in places where your energy shrinks. Because as the universe prepares you, it makes it impossible for you to keep betraying your own truth. And though this may lead you to make difficult choices, you begin to see that each thing you let go of is actually a powerful affirmation of what you are meant to carry forward. You begin to treat your energy as sacred, not because you fear others, but because you finally respect yourself. You've learned that not everything that vibrates near you deserves to stay. Not every closeness is true connection. And your sensitivity wasn't given to you to adapt to the noise. It was given to help you create spaces where calm, authenticity, and depth can exist without masks. That kind of clarity may push some people away, but it brings the essential ones closer. And you are no longer willing to negotiate what is essential. Even your silences carry more truth now. There are things you simply stop explaining. You no longer feel the need to justify your intuition. Those who feel it will understand. Those who don't need to. Because you are no longer trying to explain yourself from a place of lack. You are standing in your truth, in what you've begun to remember, that you are here for something greater, and that greater thing cannot be built on a smaller version of who you are. The most beautiful part of all this is that your sensitivity hasn't weakened you. It has brought you back to yourself. It has reconnected you with a depth that asks for no permission, seeks no approval, and needs no explanation. You are becoming a clear, open space where the great can dwell, not just to receive, but to manifest, not just to have, but to transform. Because the universe doesn't place the sacred just anywhere. It places it where it knows it will be cared for. It delivers it into the hands of those who have learned to hold themselves even in the darkness, to those who have felt so deeply that they can now carry the weight of truth without breaking. To those like you, who have come to understand that this sensitivity is not a limitation. It is the very language your soul uses when destiny is calling. The fourth sign reveals itself in a moment of quiet clarity, when you begin to feel, perhaps for the first time, that everything you've lived through, both the beautiful and the brutal, the moments that made sense and those that never did, all start to come together like scattered puzzle pieces, finally finding their place. It's as though something within you begins to whisper a truth you always carried, but could never quite articulate. That nothing happened without purpose, that the pain wasn't random, that the silence wasn't in vain. This isn't a mental understanding. It's not a conclusion your thoughts arrive at after long reflection. No, it's something deeper. It's an inner integration, an emotional and spiritual merging of all your past experiences. It feels like something clicking into place, not in your head, but in your chest, where emotions live. You suddenly start to feel why those moments of heartbreak occurred. You begin to sense why your soul chose paths that hurt, why you were led through long periods of stillness and emptiness. This inner alignment doesn't come with words or logical explanations. It comes as an expansion within you, a silent, powerful shift. You recall situations that once brought tears, and now, instead of pain, there is only gratitude. You revisit relationships that broke you and realize they gave you the clarity you didn't even know you were missing. You look at the pauses, the closed doors, the dead ends, not with bitterness, but with understanding. Not because your mind has figured them out, but because your soul no longer resists them. Nothing that happened was a punishment. It was all preparation. You realize that the universe was never working against you. Even in your darkest moments, even when you were drowning in despair and felt utterly alone, there was something, an invisible force, protecting you, guiding you, redirecting you, cutting the cords you didn't yet have the strength to cut, letting go of what no longer served you, even when you tried to hold on. And now, from this new place of awareness, you see that what you thought was loss was really sacred redirection. This inner union with your past changes everything. You no longer carry your story as a burden. You honor it as a sacred map. Every experience that broke you also taught you how to rebuild with more depth, more wisdom, more soul. Every goodbye created space for something truer to enter. Every silence that once filled you with rage or confusion is now the echo of a lesson that prepared you for the weight and beauty of what you're finally able to hold. What you're feeling now isn't nostalgia. It's alignment, a wordless kind of gratitude that sneaks in softly and changes the way you breathe. You no longer feel the urge to relive your past, to rewrite the script, or question your choices. You don't need to learn through pain anymore. You're stepping into a different chapter, one where your past transforms into wisdom, not weight. One where each scar on your heart becomes proof of your inner strength. Where the chaos that once disoriented you now reveals a hidden order. And that shift, subtle yet profound, is nothing short of transformation. Because when you stop wishing you could go back and change something, anything, it's a sign that you've reached a level of inner integration where your soul is finally ready for what's next. Great things don't arrive when everything is perfect. They arrive when you are at peace with imperfection, when you no longer run from the path that brought you here, but instead, you bless it. You've stopped waiting with anxiety. Now, you wait with presence. And that quiet, conscious waiting is a frequency, a vibration. The universe doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to your vibration, your inner state of being. And without even realizing it, you've already begun to vibrate in tune with what's on its way to you. You've also started to look at yourself through a new lens. You no longer judge yourself for who you were in earlier seasons of your life. You no longer replay your choices or torture yourself with what-ifs. Something within you has softened, not out of resignation, but out of spiritual maturity. And that softness cannot be forced. It's a sacred sign that your soul has taken a leap. Because to understand the purpose behind what you've lived is not to justify it. It's to embrace it with love. And that's what you're doing now. This integration shows up in your inner voice, in how gently you speak to yourself in moments of silence, in how you no longer pressure yourself to prove anything to anyone. You've stopped sprinting to get ahead. Now you walk intentionally and fully present, simply to inhabit the moment. You've let go of chasing ideal versions of yourself. You no longer carry other people's expectations as if they were your own. You are releasing weight, not because you are weak, but because you finally understand that your soul doesn't need to carry everything in order to move forward. And in this new lightness, something else appears: clarity. Because when you stop fighting against your own journey, the signs become visible. The answers you once searched for outside of yourself now rise from within. The questions no longer torment you, not because they've all been answered, but because they no longer matter in the same way. And you, who once lived layered beneath so many masks, so much confusion, are beginning to peel everything back and hold on to only what's essential. Every phase that once felt chaotic now reveals itself as an exact movement of your soul. Every loss, a divine opening. Every ending, a sacred preparation. And what once hurt now empowers you. Not because the pain was beautiful, but because you made it meaningful. Because you chose growth over bitterness. And that choice, that fidelity to your own becoming in the middle of chaos, is the clearest sign of all. Because what's coming isn't just arriving by destiny. It's arriving because you're now strong enough to hold it without it breaking you. Because you can now receive it without shrinking under its weight. Because you no longer crave it from a place of emptiness. You recognize it as the natural result of someone who has made space within their soul. And you, without even noticing, have already made that space, not through sacrifice, but through alignment, through coherence, through stillness, through that unshakable certainty that doesn't need form or words, but pulses through your being and tells you, now you are truly ready. And the fifth sign is when, without really knowing how or why, you begin to vibrate differently. You can't quite explain it. Nothing major has shifted on the outside. Your job might still be the same. Your relationships, your routine, your daily life. They all look quite similar. But deep inside, you feel it. Something has shifted. A subtle, yet profound change in your energy has taken place. You're not trying harder. You're not forcing anything. Yet, there's this undeniable sense that you're standing in a new frequency. You begin to notice that the way you perceive life has changed. Your presence is more grounded, your thoughts are more clear, and your ability to connect with others and with yourself feels deeper. It's as if something has awakened within you. You're no longer living life from the same lens. Even though your external world hasn't caught up yet, even though the people around you might not see the difference, you know you're ready. Because it's not the world that validates this transformation. It's not the circumstances or the people around you who confirm that you've made the leap. It's your inner frequency, your internal vibration, that already carries the evidence of your evolution. You can feel it pulsing in your chest, resonating in your choices, speaking through your intuition. And as that vibration rises, something powerful begins to happen. You start attracting new experiences. People you've never met before suddenly appear, drawn to the energy you're emitting. Places, opportunities, and encounters that feel aligned start flowing into your life. But this isn't happening because you're desperately searching. You're not chasing it. You're not grasping. You're simply no longer in resonance with what once was. The mismatch between who you are becoming and what you once tolerated is becoming impossible to ignore. The universe, in its quiet wisdom, has recalibrated your energy, not as a random shift, but as a deliberate preparation. You are being prepared for a life that is more authentic, more expansive, more aligned with the truth of who you've always been deep within. This new vibration of yours isn't always visible to the naked eye, but it's undeniably felt. You feel it every morning when you wake up, and there's less heaviness in your chest, more presence in your body. You feel it in your decisions, how you now choose what nourishes you without guilt or over-explaining, how you can no longer tolerate what used to drain you, how you now breathe deeper, slower, more fully, not because life is perfect, but because you found your center. You're no longer operating from urgency. You're no longer seeking validation, no longer trying to prove your worth to anyone. You simply embody it. You're becoming more attuned to how you feel and less preoccupied with how others perceive you. And that subtle inner shift, that quiet revolution within, changes everything. Because when your vibration rises, your reality responds. Not always instantly, not always dramatically, but always inevitably. You begin to witness synchronicities that once went unnoticed, encounters that feel divinely orchestrated, people who speak your soul's language, even if you've never met them before, ideas that land with a force that doesn't come from your mind, but from your vibration. And you're no longer surprised, because now you know it's not magic, it's alignment. You're seeing on the outside what you've long been cultivating within. You've cleared so much. You've let go of so much. You've chosen stillness over noise again and again. And now the universe is responding, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Your presence is changing too. You feel it in how others respond to you. Some open up around you without even knowing why. Others quietly drift away, and you don't take it personally anymore. You understand that when your energy shifts, everything that no longer resonates must find its proper place. It's not loss, it's alignment. It's not rejection, it's vibrational clarity. And you no longer resist it. You're no longer available for what depletes you. You're now choosing to stay where you are nourished. You're no longer settling for halfway love, halfway commitment, halfway presence. You no longer give your time out of obligation. You're stepping into a new way of living, a quieter yet infinitely more powerful way, because your vibration is no longer begging, it's inviting, it's summoning what's meant for you. And the most beautiful part is, you're not waiting for something big to happen in order to feel whole. You already feel it now. You're not looking to be completed by what's to come. What's coming is not arriving to fill a void. It's coming to expand a fullness that you've already recognized within. And when that becomes your truth, you know you're ready. Because the greatness that's arriving doesn't impose itself. It meets you where you are. And you are already vibrating in alignment. When the universe prepares you for something extraordinary, it doesn't do it through noise or promises. It doesn't send loud declarations or fireworks. It prepares you with silence that transforms, with pauses that rearrange, with subtle signs that only the soul can decode. And you, who have walked through so many phases, who have remained true to your essence despite everything, are now receiving what was always meant for you. not because you chased it, but because you became it. You don't need to understand every step. Just remember, you are not being delayed. You are being refined. You are not wasting time. You are making space. And what's on its way will not arrive through panic or pressure. It will come through truth, through alignment. And without even realizing it, you're already vibrating in that truth. If this message resonated with you, if you felt something awaken inside you with every word, it's because what's coming is already near. You don't need to strive for it. Just stay open, stay grounded, stay aligned. And if you wish to keep walking this path hand in hand with messages like this one, this space will be here for you. Because here, we don't just speak. We remember. We remember who we are, what we came for, and what's always been within us, waiting for the moment we were ready to see it. Your soul already knows the way. It just needed to hear it. Have you ever felt that strange, almost magical sensation in your stomach? The one that seems to flutter every time someone you're deeply interested in gets close. It's that unmistakable mix of nervousness and excitement, a physical reaction that feels impossible to ignore. Chances are you've experienced it, and more than likely, you've also found yourself wondering, even if only for a fleeting moment, whether that person feels the same way about you. Today, I invite you to open your mind, to go beyond the surface and embark with me on a profound inner journey. Together, we'll dive deep into the mysteries of the unconscious, guided by the revolutionary insights of the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. Through his ideas, we'll explore a hidden world of subtle yet powerful signals that may be silently telling you something extraordinary, that the person who's been on your mind might, in fact, feel something much stronger for you than you ever imagined. According to Carl Jung, much of human communication doesn't occur through words. Instead, it unfolds quietly in the realm of the unconscious. It's in the movements, the gestures, the lingering glances, and in those fleeting behaviors that often escape the awareness of our conscious minds. Yet paradoxically, they carry the most truthful expressions of what a person is really feeling. When someone harbors genuine feelings for you, their unconscious often betrays their deepest emotions before their words ever do. So, what should you be looking for? There are certain unmistakable signs, subtle yet potent, that can confirm, almost without a doubt, that someone feels a deep connection with you. These signs may seem small on the surface, but their implications are profound, and once you begin to notice them, they can completely transform the way you perceive your relationship with that person. Let's begin with one of the most revealing and mysterious signs: the way they look at you. Jung believed that the eyes are not just windows to the soul, they're portals to the unconscious. The gaze, he said, is an uncontrollable mirror of our inner world, one that often reveals what words attempt to conceal. So ask yourself, how does this person look at you? Pay very close attention. Do they maintain eye contact with you longer than what would normally be expected? That lingering gaze, that subtle refusal to look away, is not random. When someone feels a deep, authentic attraction, their eyes instinctively try to connect with yours, as if searching for something hidden within them. It's as though they're scanning your soul for clues, longing to understand you more fully, more intimately. And there's more. Watch carefully for a specific physiological response, one that the person themselves might not even be aware of. Observe the pupils. When someone is in the presence of something, or someone they find deeply attractive, their pupils dilate. This expansion is not something they can fake. It is a spontaneous, biological reaction, one governed entirely by the unconscious mind. It happens when we're moved by desire, fascination, or a strong emotional pull. That simple, involuntary dilation of the pupils is one of the most genuine, revealing indicators of attraction. It's a silent declaration of interest, unspoken and uncontrollable. The person may not say a word about how they feel, but their eyes might already be telling you everything. The second sign is even more subtle, yet incredibly powerful. Carl Jung believed that our unconscious mind is constantly striving to be near that which attracts us or reflects some deep part of our identity. It's not a conscious decision. It's more like an invisible force pulling us closer to what resonates with our inner world. This attraction goes beyond mere physical or superficial interest. It's a reflection of something much deeper, the alignment between two psyches, a mirror of something familiar yet longed for. Now ask yourself, does that person consistently find reasons, no matter how trivial, to be around you? Do they keep showing up in places where you often go, as if by coincidence? Do they ask questions that seem almost unnecessary, just for the sake of initiating interaction? Maybe they brush against your arm while talking, or gently touch your shoulder as if it's part of the conversation. These seemingly insignificant actions are anything but random. Jung explained that such behaviors are outward expressions of unconscious desire. The human psyche, according to him, has a language of its own, a silent way of communicating through actions, proximity, and energy. When someone is genuinely interested in you, their unconscious seeks not only closeness, but a fusion of emotional worlds. That subtle physical contact, that almost imperceptible touch, is a symbolic gesture, an attempt to reduce the emotional distance between you both. These actions are signals, whispers of the unconscious trying to establish a connection that words alone cannot express. They are not deliberate in the conventional sense, but they are intentional in the deeper psychological realm. A truly interested person, one who feels drawn to you on an emotional and psychological level, won't always declare it with grand gestures or confessions. Instead, their inner self will push them to move closer, to create shared moments, to break the invisible barriers that separate strangers from soulmates. This is why you might feel that their presence is never far from yours. It's not just coincidence, it's resonance. When someone's unconscious is attuned to yours, they will gravitate toward you, whether they fully realize it or not. These small behaviors, the gentle touches, the chance meetings, the seemingly unnecessary questions, are all part of the same silent language. They are evidence of a desire for intimacy that runs deeper than surface attraction. In Jungian terms, this is not merely about liking someone. It's about the self recognizing the other as meaningful, as familiar, as essential. The unconscious mind is searching for emotional connection, for the possibility of merging with another in a way that transcends words. So, the next time someone finds reasons to be close to you, physically or emotionally, don't dismiss it. It might just be their soul trying to speak to yours. The third sign lies in how someone responds to your emotions. When a person truly feels something deep for you, even the slightest shift in your mood won't go unnoticed. They become finely attuned to your emotional state, sometimes even before you've said a single word. It's as if they can sense your inner world without needing any explanation. This sensitivity is not coincidental. It's a profound reflection of how deeply they are connected to you, emotionally and psychologically. Carl Jung once explained that at the unconscious level, people naturally develop a heightened sense of empathy toward those they genuinely care about. This means that someone who harbors real feelings for you won't just react to your emotions, they will feel them with you. They'll intuitively recognize when you're happy, when you're hurting, or when something just doesn't feel right. And more importantly, they won't ignore it. They won't brush it off as if it doesn't matter. Instead, they'll respond with a sincere desire to understand what's going on inside you. Now take a moment to reflect. Think about those instances when your day has been heavy, when life has thrown something difficult your way, and you felt overwhelmed or emotionally drained. What did that person do? Did they try to distract you with light-hearted conversation? Did they offer a shoulder to lean on, or simply sit with you in silence, letting you know you weren't alone? Maybe they offered comforting words, a small gesture of kindness, or even just listened without judgment. These actions, though subtle, reveal something deeply meaningful. When someone makes a real effort to lift your spirits or provide genuine comfort, not because they feel obligated, but because your pain matters to them, that's a powerful signal. It shows that their interest in you goes far beyond surface-level attraction or fleeting curiosity. They are emotionally invested. They are connected to you in a way that transcends words or appearances. This kind of presence, this kind of care, is not easy to find, and when it's real, it resonates on a much deeper level, one that touches the core of who you are. So pay attention to those moments when someone chooses to show up for you emotionally, especially when you're not at your best. Their empathy, their concern, and their desire to see you feel whole again. Those are the signs that their feelings for you are not just genuine, but profoundly rooted in something real. The fourth sign is deeply tied to the idea of synchronicity. Renowned Swiss psychologist Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity to describe a phenomenon where two seemingly unrelated events appear to be meaningfully connected, not by cause and effect, but by their profound symbolic or emotional resonance. It's as if life itself is orchestrating certain moments to align perfectly, creating a sense that something greater is at play, something beyond logic, something that touches the soul. Now, take a moment to reflect on your encounters with this particular person. Think carefully about how often your paths cross, in the most unexpected yet meaningful ways. Have you noticed that the two of you seem to share remarkably similar tastes, interests, or even thoughts? Sometimes it feels almost uncanny, as though you're looking into a mirror. You might find yourselves completing each other's sentences, thinking the same things at the same time, or expressing feelings in ways that seem to come from a shared emotional source. These are not just random coincidences. They are signals of something deeper unfolding beneath the surface. When that person frequently remarks things like, "What a coincidence," or seems genuinely surprised by how much the two of you have in common, it's a reflection of an unconscious recognition. It's as if both of your inner worlds are resonating at the same frequency. What you are truly experiencing is not just compatibility. It's an invisible thread pulling you both toward each other, weaving your lives together in a way that feels destined. This profound connection is not born from surface-level attraction or intellectual understanding alone. It emerges from the unconscious, that vast, hidden part of our minds that Carl Jung spent his life exploring. The unconscious has a mysterious way of guiding us toward people who awaken something deep within us, who mirror aspects of ourselves that we may not even be fully aware of. And when two unconscious minds recognize each other, even if the individuals themselves cannot fully explain why, the bond that forms is intense, almost magnetic. These invisible threads spun by the unconscious are not accidental. They serve a purpose. They bring souls together who are meant to help each other grow, heal, and evolve. The universe seems to conspire in their favor, arranging events, timing, and circumstances that defy rational explanation. It's as if life is saying, "Pay attention, this matters." So if you feel this kind of synchrony with someone, if your interactions are filled with strange alignments, shared dreams, or parallel life experiences, take it seriously. Such encounters are rare and significant. They often signify that the two of you are not just passing ships in the night, but rather travelers meant to journey together for a time, perhaps even for a lifetime. These are the moments when you realize that destiny may not be a myth after all, but a quiet force moving just beneath the surface, waiting for you to notice. The fifth sign is all about body language. According to Carl Jung, our bodies communicate what the unconscious wants to express, even when we try to conceal it with our conscious minds. The body becomes a messenger of hidden truths, often revealing more than words ever could. Pay close attention to how this person behaves physically when they're with you. Do they adopt open postures? Are their arms and legs uncrossed? Is their torso facing you directly, maybe even leaning slightly in your direction? These subtle gestures are not random. They're indicators that, on an unconscious level, this person is open to you, emotionally available, and perhaps even drawn to your presence. But it doesn't stop there. Have you ever noticed if this person unconsciously mirrors your movements or gestures? This phenomenon is known as unconscious mirroring or mimicry, and it's a powerful, non-verbal sign of empathy and deep connection. It's not something done deliberately. Rather, the body naturally seeks to align itself with the other person when a true emotional bond begins to form. When someone is genuinely interested in you, their physical behavior synchronizes with yours in a silent yet deeply meaningful way. It's as if both of you are engaged in an invisible dance, creating harmony that doesn't need to be spoken to be felt. Up to this point, we've uncovered several clear signals that can reveal far more than you might have imagined. These cues, though subtle, can communicate volumes about someone's emotional openness and internal world. But there's more. Jung identified additional signs, equally powerful, that may surprise you even more. These next insights could radically change the way you understand human relationships, and more importantly, how you interpret the signals you're receiving from that special person who may mean more to you than you realize. And this is where a deeper, more mysterious dimension begins to emerge, the realm of the collective unconscious that Jung so often explored in his work. There exists a type of connection that becomes evident not through words, but through the way someone listens. When a person is truly present with you, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, something remarkable begins to unfold. Their silence isn't empty. It's charged with presence. They're not simply waiting for their turn to speak. Instead, they're absorbing every word you say, fully immersed in your experience, as if your thoughts have become their priority in that moment. This kind of listening, what we call active listening, doesn't require exaggerated gestures or dramatic reactions. It flows effortlessly, born from a place of genuine curiosity and emotional openness. It's a form of internal surrender that reflects not obligation, but a true desire to know who you are beyond your surface. According to Jung, when someone takes on the role of an archetypal figure in our lives, like the anima or the animus, which represent the feminine and masculine energies within the psyche, something profound happens. The soul begins to recognize something in the other. It's a kind of internal acknowledgement that transcends logic, almost like meeting a piece of yourself in another form. You may start to feel that this person is strangely familiar, as if you've known them long before you actually met. There's an inexplicable comfort in their presence, a sense of home that defies explanation. And when you're with them, time behaves differently. Minutes feel like moments, or sometimes like eternities. Even after they leave, their energy seems to linger around you, like an echo that refuses to fade. You find yourself thinking about them, feeling their presence, sensing a pull that's not entirely rational. Don't ignore that feeling. It's not just romantic fantasy. It's your unconscious responding with intensity, recognizing something that goes far beyond the ordinary. This isn't coincidence, it's resonance. The unconscious, deep and wise, speaks in symbols, feelings, and energy. When it meets something or someone that vibrates at a similar frequency, it responds powerfully. This is not just emotional attraction, it's psychological recognition. Jung believed that such encounters are meant to awaken parts of us that have been dormant, to help us grow, to heal, and to evolve. These people come into our lives not by accident, but by a kind of psychological necessity. They mirror parts of ourselves we may not fully understand yet, inviting us to a deeper self-awareness. So if you find yourself drawn to someone in a way that feels different, almost mystical, take a step back and observe. Listen to your body, notice your thoughts, and feel into the energy that surrounds your interactions. The body never lies. The unconscious is always speaking, even when we think we're in control. And sometimes, when we're lucky enough, we meet someone who helps us hear that inner voice more clearly than ever before. Another powerful sign arises during moments of vulnerability. Pay attention to whether this person feels comfortable sharing their doubts, fears, or past wounds with you. Jung taught that the soul only opens up to what it perceives as safe, as something that feels like an extension of itself. If someone begins to reveal who they truly are with you, without masks, even confessing things they've never told anyone else, you're witnessing a very clear manifestation of deep trust and genuine emotional interest. And let's not forget something essential: how that person reacts when you share your achievements, your ideas, or your dreams. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of realizing one's true self. If this person supports you, pushes you to grow, and celebrates your progress as if it were their own, that's not just kindness. It's a form of emotional connection that emerges from the unconscious, where who you are at your core holds sacred value for the other. But there's also a sign that, although it may seem contradictory, is actually one of the most revealing: discomfort. Sometimes someone who feels something very deep for you doesn't know how to handle it and may act with a kind of emotional clumsiness. They might appear nervous, avoid eye contact at key moments, or even seem distracted. Jung explained that what is repressed in the unconscious often shows itself in ambivalent ways. So, if you notice contradictions in how they behave, if one day they seem very close and the next more distant, it may not be disinterest. It could be an inner struggle playing out inside them. The unconscious energy is powerful. Often, without realizing it, our dreams begin to be filled with that person's presence. Jung analyzed dreams as open windows into the soul, and when someone appears repeatedly in our dreams, it's a sign that this person holds a deep psychic role in our inner world. Maybe you haven't fully noticed it yet, but if you're dreaming about this person and those dream encounters feel intense, emotional, or meaningful, the unconscious is telling you something your mind hasn't yet fully processed. And beyond the psychological, Jung linked this with the spiritual. When one soul is touched by another, the body reacts too. Subtle changes in your heartbeat. That sense of feeling more alive when that person is near, or an odd serenity when you simply hear their voice. These are psychosomatic manifestations that reveal a profound emotional resonance. It's not fantasy, and it's not self-suggestion. It's a symphony between your unconscious and theirs, playing notes that words often can't explain. True interest isn't always expressed through clear declarations or classic romantic gestures. Sometimes it hides in what seems insignificant. A long pause before saying goodbye, a random question about your most personal likes, or a smile that appears for no reason when they see you. Each of these gestures may be orchestrated by the deepest layers of the unconscious, where the most authentic and lasting connections are forged. And there are still more signs that Carl Jung helped to decipher. Signs that most people overlook because they sit right on the edge of the invisible. Let's go even deeper into that hidden universe, because what comes next could open your eyes in a way you never imagined. There are moments when the mind runs out of words, but the body keeps on speaking. Jung believed the unconscious expresses itself through symbolism, and that includes subtle physical reactions. Pay attention if that person touches their neck, adjusts their clothes, runs a hand through their hair, or fidgets with an object while with you, without realizing it. These gestures aren't random. They reveal an internal tension between what they feel and what they cannot say. These movements come from the urge to control emotions that are becoming too intense to contain. Even awkward or clumsy speech can be a clue. Notice if the person says things out of place, contradicts themselves, or laughs unexpectedly. This isn't just regular insecurity, it's a defensive reaction from the unconscious, trying to protect what they feel without revealing it entirely. Jung taught that when the conscious and unconscious collide, the truest emotions are born. If you notice that conflict in how they speak to you, it might mean what they feel is stronger than they're able to process. There's something else often overlooked: the need to remember. If this person recalls tiny details you've already forgotten, things you said in passing, your favorite food, a place you only mentioned once, don't take it lightly. Remembering is an act of the soul when there's affection. When someone truly likes us, their unconscious attention sharpens and they begin to record what comes from us as if it were precious. That selective memory reveals more than words could ever say. And then there's a sign you can't see, but you can feel: anticipation. You'll notice they somehow respond before you even speak. They offer you a jacket before you feel cold. They ask if you've eaten before you say you're hungry. They message you at the exact moment you were thinking about them. It's not telepathy, it's unconscious connection. Jung spoke of subtle energetic fields, of how our emotions can extend beyond the body and reach others without physical contact. If someone anticipates your needs, it means they're perceiving you beyond the surface. Sometimes, what the unconscious can't hide shows itself through the music that person listens to, the books they start reading, or the quotes they share. Without realizing, they're beginning to resonate with your interests your ideas, your symbols. This isn't coincidence. Jung described this as psychic transference, a process where two inner worlds start influencing each other. If you notice that your preferences start to show up in them without you ever mentioning it, it means a deep-level fusion is taking place. And pay very close attention to how this person behaves when someone else shows interest in you. They might not say it out loud, but their body responds, their voice changes, they look away, or they fall silent. And that silence speaks. Jung would say, this is where the shadow appears, the part of ourselves we don't control, but which reveals what we truly feel. If you notice restrained jealousy, if you sense a quiet discomfort or a subtle need to claim space without aggression, what you're witnessing is the unconscious revealing its desire for exclusive connection. Another subtle but powerful sign emerges when that person can share silence with you without feeling awkward. It's not about filling the air with words, but about simply being, just being. Jung believed the soul finds rest in the presence of someone with whom it doesn't need to explain itself. If you both can exist in silence without forcing it, if a peaceful stillness surrounds you even when no words are spoken, that presence is speaking louder than any conversation ever could. And if amidst all of this, they have shown you any of their wounds, their mistakes, their broken parts, listen closely. That is not something shown to just anyone. Jung said, humans only reveal their shadow to someone they perceive as a symbol of transformation. If someone opens up to you like that, it's because deep down, they feel you're a safe space for their most vulnerable truth. Don't take it lightly. There's more. So much more. The unconscious is an ocean of symbols, of hidden gestures, of invisible pulses. What comes next goes even deeper. Because when someone longs for you with their soul, their truest language isn't spoken. It's revealed in every act they can't control. Sometimes, a connection is most clearly felt in unexpected moments, like when you're absent. Jung explained that the unconscious gains clarity when something slips from view, when a person feels your absence more intensely than they can express. Their behavior shifts. Maybe they grow restless, more thoughtful, more distant from others. And the moment you reappear, their brightness returns, their lightness revives, as if your presence brought back a part of themselves that had been missing. That emotional shift isn't just nostalgia. It's the unconscious recognizing an invisible but deeply real bond. Sometimes, without realizing it, this person becomes your emotional echo. They don't just remember what you said. They begin to use your phrases, your words, even your tone of voice. This subtle mirroring is one of the strongest signs of unconscious resonance. Jung described it as a symbolic identification process, where someone starts to incorporate parts of you into their own story without knowing it. It's a way of keeping you close, of feeling near, even when you're not physically there. And there's a deeper expression still, the creative impulse. When someone is emotionally stirred by your energy, they often begin to create. They might start writing, painting, composing music, or just becoming more expressive for no clear reason. Jung saw creativity as a release valve of the unconscious, a way to channel what can't be logically explained. If you've noticed this person becoming more artistic since you entered their life, it means you're awakening inner areas that had long been dormant. There are also the moments of pause, not from indifference, but from silent observation. Some people, when feeling something profound, pull back a little, not because they don't want closeness, but because they're trying to understand what's happening within them. Jung said, that when the unconscious encounters a figure that represents something archetypal or transformative, it doesn't respond with immediate euphoria. Instead, it responds with a kind of inward stillness. So, if this person sometimes gazes at you in silence, as if trying to decipher you, it's because their soul is working to give shape to what it feels. And when that connection is real, even physical spaces begin to shift. Jung spoke about how symbols also manifest in the environment. If that person starts inviting you to meaningful places, if they want to share personal spaces with you, their home, favorite spots, their most intimate corners, it's not just a social gesture. It's an unconscious way of opening their world to you, of emotional integration. Whoever shares their spaces also shares their story. There's another sign many don't recognize: the emotional tension before seeing you. If you know that person gets nervous, prepares carefully, or even avoids meeting for a while without a clear reason, don't take it as disinterest. Jung said the soul trembles before what it truly desires. Often unconscious love first shows as fear, as an urge to flee before surrendering to vulnerability. If someone seems to be wrestling with an internal battle before meeting you, it's because you represent something bigger than they've faced before. And when you finally meet, watch the body language at goodbye. A simple farewell is not the same as one where the body resists leaving. A step that remains halfway taken, a lingering last glance, an extra word that wasn't necessary but extends the moment. All of these are expressions of a soul unwilling to let go. Jung said the soul seeks permanence where it feels at home. And if the body doesn't want to leave, it's because the unconscious has found refuge in your presence. And we haven't even touched the most mysterious form. Coincidences that seem too precise appear exactly when you think about that person, and suddenly they write to you, or you dream about them, and the next day you see them. Or when something they said repeats somewhere else, as if the whole universe conspires to keep you connected. Jung called these synchronicities, and far from mere chance, they're signs of a hidden order, an invisible web between two souls more connected than they realize. And this isn't over, because when the unconscious begins revealing its truth, it does so little by little, in fragments, in symbols, in barely perceptible signs. But if you know how to look, if you listen with your soul, you'll discover there's much more beneath the surface of a simple attraction. What comes next might be exactly what you needed to understand, what their heart has been silently screaming. Sometimes the clearest message isn't in what's said, but in what's held back, in what's left unsaid, in that glance that drops when it meets yours, in that message almost written but erased, in that confession hovering on the lips but never spoken. Jung said, the unconscious doesn't always express itself clearly because its language is symbolic, tangled, but deeply honest. So if you've noticed all these signs, if you feel there's something beyond mere liking, you're not imagining things. You're perceiving a silent message emerging from the soul. And maybe until now, that person hasn't told you, hasn't found the words, or hasn't allowed themselves to accept it. But you feel it because something vibrates differently when they're with you, because their energy shifts, because time bends, because their silences speak louder than any conversation, because you don't need them to say it. You already know. And if while listening to this, someone kept appearing in your mind over and over, it's probably for a reason. The invisible is more real than you think. Now I want you to join this conversation that goes beyond words. If this message touched something inside you, if you saw yourself reflected, or if you know someone going through this, Share this video. Maybe you'll give answers to someone who still doesn't know how to name what they feel. Leave your experience in the comments. I want to read you. Tell me if you've lived any of these signs or if your intuition has revealed something the other hasn't said yet. Your story might be exactly what another person needs to awaken. And if you want to keep exploring the secret language of the soul, the hidden truths of the unconscious, and everything Carl Jung left us as a legacy, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We're building a community of awakened souls, people who don't settle for the superficial and seek to understand what hides in gestures, dreams, and life-changing signs. Because what you feel isn't coincidence, it's a call.